Hello there, and yeah, that's yet another Longhorn video. And as you can see, yes, it shows up Windows XP, but you're about to see that it's not quite Windows XP. Yeah, it's a very early build. We're back in 2002 now, and as you can see, it's pretty much Windows XP with a different skin. It even says Longhorn XP Professional instead of just Longhorn, and it was pre-scratch, so it's pretty much Windows XP. It's very early. That just shows that Microsoft was working on Vista for such a long time, you know. Because even back in 2002, like 1 year after XP's release, and they already had them testing versions running. So yeah, and it's a little slow, I'm not gonna lie. It takes a lot of time to boot up, as you can notice, and some things don't quite work, or they do take some time to load. Like as you can see, I can't use the taskbar right now because it's locked. And as you can see, if we press the right mouse button, I mean, it shows up the properties menu. As you can see, it's pretty damn different from XP, but it's glitched. So if we click on it, we can't quite see what's going on. It's very glitched. So we can't really mess around with that. So you can change the background. Yeah, see, not quite. It's very early, pretty damn useless. As you can see, it's under construction. So yeah, it's a very early build. And here's the classic one where we can actually, you know, do stuff. And okay, not quite. It's a little sluggish, yeah. But here you can change themes. There's Plex and Windows Classic. Cool. So no Luna, surprisingly, because Luna got back later on in time, but now it's 2002. It's a very early one, and still pretty much XP. It says XP everywhere. You know, it's a reskin. It's a different like look, but generally it's pretty much XP. Everything says Windows XP Professional. It screams XP everywhere. As far as the features go, you know, they have this different look, which is a little odd. I mean, I would say back in 2002 that would look cool, you know. I bet that if I was back in 2002, I would find that pretty damn dope, because that was dope for 2002 standards. We gotta remember that in 2002 we were still using CRT, I mean, sorry, them all white and big monitors, tube, you know, them white keyboards, PS2 keyboards and mouses, and with it was not even laser yet, it was the tracking ball. Yeah, so that would look pretty dope back in 2002, but now it just looks ugly and out of place, and you know, the color for the drop down is kind of weird as well. It looks very odd, but hey, that was the coolest thing back then. As you can see, it shows XP. We got 1 gig of RAM for this VM because I thought it would make sense, you know. It was 2002 and this version is not demanding at all as far as hardware goes, so I was like, oh, let's give it a very realistic amount of RAM, like what I did with the first beta 1, build number 65112 actually, which was the first beta build, which is public. I mean, leaked, because maybe there was another ones, but we don't know of, because, you know, they don't usually get leaked. You know, Microsoft's very careful about that, but sometimes it does happen, and it happens a lot of times actually. But you know, they keep getting leaked every now and then. It keeps showing up, new builds, new stuff to try and mess around with. But yeah, generally, you know, that's the first 5112 is the first we know of from the beta, using Vista instead of Longhorn down there in the corner here, in case. But like, you know, this one though is a very very early one, so it's like using Windows XP. I think that like the guys actually got you tested back then. They were probably like, oh, that's pretty much XP, dude. I'm bored. I'm not gonna test that. Sorry, this is pretty much XP. It screams XP. You know, they tried something different. As you can see, the music tab here, some image. It's a little my pictures, view slideshow, make album, burn DVD. Yeah, I had a DVD burner. Look at that, cool. My documents. See, it has this different layout, which kind of reminds me a lot of Windows 2000 somehow. So I don't know, sort of remnant. Maybe they carried it over a little bit. They thought it would be cool, but turns out it's not quite. You know, but for 2002, I would say 2002 until 2004, maybe 2005, it will look pretty damn cool. But after 2006, not anymore, because the whole design concept, not only in OSs in general, but like gadget-wise, for laptops, computers, in general, monitors, keyboards, everything changed. That was a big change in how things look. The design got a little more modern, so that will look a lot out of place. But back then, the shit was the coolest thing ever. And I can't imagine that, because it reminds me a lot of like camera softwares from 2001, 2002. I don't know, it kind of brings them flashbacks, you know, like Comedia camera software, for instance. It does remind me of that a lot, and a few other ones for image editing stuff. So it has this, I don't know, you know, it's sort of like getting straight to the past. Whenever I boot up this version of Longhorn, it's like I get into a door that sends me back to the past, like a sort of time portal. You know, it's kind of getting inside of a time portal and getting back in time, and it brings them flashbacks, you know. Just look at that, dude. It's so early 2000s, and that was the coolest thing back then. I'm pretty sure, like, when people actually opened that and they saw that, they were like, oh wow, that looks so damn cool. But now it's just like, oh, cringe. So cringe. That was the coolest thing, you know. Microsoft, they always, you know, like to innovate with them visuals. And like for the time, you can see that. You can see how that transitions between them years. Like first build 2002, then 2003, then 2004. You can see how the whole design layout thingy changed through time, and it kind of followed the trends. It wasn't like just a Microsoft internal thing. So it followed trends in general, like for software architecture, you know. It was changing to fit the new standards. So I would say early 2000s were sort of a transition between the old 9.x looks from Windows 95, 98 to something more like Arrow, making use of the new amount of RAM and VRAM, you know, because they had that to spare now. I'd say that was the big mistake, because it was early. It was too early for that. I'm not gonna lie. My opinion, I think it was too early to start messing around with transparency and stuff like that. It's not like, oh, you can't mess around with that. You couldn't try that out. But like, I think they forced it too early, you know, and hence why Vista kind of sucked and shit, because people were not ready, you know, because like, if you compare like Windows 10 with Vista, 10 is actually lighter than Windows Vista, so you can tell how heavy it was back then. So now 10 years later, actually 12 years later, it's just it's not as heavy as Vista, you know. It doesn't make sense, because usually it tends to get worse, you know, it tends to get heavier. But no, it was like, oh, Vista heavy as fuck, 7, alright, still heavy but not as much. Then 8 was okay, and 10 is like, wow, it runs on 1 gig of RAM, dude. Vista does not run with just 1 gig. Yeah, I mean, for like web browsing, just 1 tab maybe, but like for, you know, advanced use now, I wouldn't say so. Nor would 10, I know, but like you can probably go with like 3 tabs. No biggie. But like, yeah, I kind of like it. It's a very, very, very clear portrait of how, okay, the memory could not be read. Microsoft Paint crashed. We killed the system, yeah. See, it's very unstable. Even though it's pretty much XP with a few changes, I think they changed a lot in the core part of the system, and it kind of broke a few things. But as you can see, it's very, very, very... Okay, no. Okay, no crash. The sound, though, kind of cringe. But hey, whatever. There is remote desktop connection. I wonder if I can actually use that with actual server. I wonder if it would let me connect. Probably not. But hey, anyway, that's not even the point. Yeah, as you guys can see, there's not really a lot of changes from that to XP, but like it's such a dated design though. You can see how that, like, it's a true portrayal of early 2000s, dude. That's one of the builds that makes it pretty damn clear how they were trying to fit the design standards. And as the standards changed, because like Vista took a lot of time under development, that was one of the problems actually, because they had to change a lot to keep up with the standards, because, you know, technology back then was growing so fast in terms of, you know, evolution in general, like for cards, CPUs, RAM. It was such a long leap, you know, from like 2001 to 2002 and so on and so on. Every year was a massive leap. It's not like that anymore, so we could say we've been stuck as far as pretty much RAM and CPU. We've been stuck for 4 years now. Let's say that, because like the i7 4790K, 90K, I mean, still, you know, does a job as well as a just as well as a 7700K or 8700K. So there was not such a massive, you know, leap between those generations, which was not a thing back in the early 2000s. The leap was massive. It used to be always massive. It was like, oh, 1 year later, your hardware was already useless. Your CPU would be far weaker than whatever was new back then. So that was a big problem. You had to change your build every fucking year, because it was like that. It was rushed. It was intense. Things were going on. It wasn't just hardware, you know. The design concepts were changing as well. A lot of things changed in the early 2000s, you know, regarding design and functionality, features, and they had to keep up with that. And, you know, that kind of fucked things up, because the development time was a little longer than usual for Microsoft, and they kind of lost themselves. They had to wipe it all and start over, and, you know, to try and find a decent visual identity. So every build pretty much makes a clear portrait of every year, so you can easily tell, oh, this one 2002, this one 2003, this one 2004, 2005, because it follows the trends. And usually Microsoft sets the trends with their software, you know. They usually were the ones that set the trends for looks, you know. It's not like that anymore. I would say Linux got passed with GNOME and Plasma, but back then they were the trendsetters as far as visual goes, so they had to work really hard on staying on the top, because it was hard to be on the top. So they had to be always bringing something new, making something different, straight out of the box. They had to come up with different stuff, different icons, different layouts. Aero, of course. Transparency was pretty damn fancy back then, even though no one could run. It was very, very damn cool. You know, it was lit. So they had to be always on top. They had to be the ones with the cool thing. They had to be the ones with the leading edge. That was Microsoft. That's still Microsoft, even though they don't quite get there anymore. They have the edge, of course. They definitely do have the leading edge. But as far as design goes, I wouldn't say so anymore. But back then they were the trendsetters, and you can see that by looking at like the Longhorn builds, how it changes, how it shapes up. Like every year, it's a completely different design, it's a completely different trend, it's a completely different menu looks and shit. Because they were probably like, oh, okay, so are we gonna release this year? So yeah, it's gonna look like that. Oops, we couldn't release this year, so next year, oh shit, wait a second, the design trends are not the same, we gotta change that. Oh, look at that, it's 2005 now, we gotta change everything again. So we gotta look like 2005 now, we gotta make our system look actual. So that was the problem with Microsoft, you know. they had to be they had to have the leading edge as far as design goes. So they were always, you know, trying to get better visually and get, you know. So that was a little bit of a problem during the development, which it's kind of good for us people that actually like to look at early builds, because there's a lot of differences. So every build is a new journey, is a new adventure, it's a new system. If we compare this one with build 4053 that we tested, and it's on YouTube, by the way, so if you want to watch that, just go there and look for it, because there's 4053, there's build 5112 as well. And they all look different, even though it's the same system, it's the same so-called system, it's the same wannabe Windows Vista, but everyone has like a massive difference, like visually speaking, and feature-wise, they all changed a lot. Because Microsoft was always trying to be on top when it comes to layout and all the features, the system features, and even the install size, because look at that, just 2 gigabytes. And like the one we tested, the last one we tested took like 8 gigs. So you can see there's a lot of difference. It was already based off 2003. This one is based off XP. But yeah, I think that's it for today. Let's say goodbye. Goodbye, Windows Longhorn, and goodbye, guys. Feel free to leave a comment and subscribe. Bye.